Okay, folks, it's just a tad after 4. If all the members of this special committee on accessible and quality health care would take their seat. My intern has a folder for each one who is a committee member. It'll have the substitute bill in it and some additional information for the members. I get text all along, more people are on the way. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started because this is an issue that a lot of people have expressed interest in. I've got a prepared statement here I want to enter so that hopefully it will kind of set the stage for what we're trying to do. And anybody who comes in late, please do so quietly so that everybody else can hear. And also please turn your phones off so that I don't want to hear any phones ringing. Okay. This is a prepared statement I've made for this particular meeting. And it says, we gather at a time of change and opportunity in our healthcare marketplace. Our concept of healthcare is shifting from simply treating conditions to a lifelong progression of preventative care. The goal is to detect and treat conditions early that improves the individual's quality of life and saves cost along the way. As our healthcare model changes, so too must our methods for delivery and the regulatory framework in which the market operates. We know that all Georgians deserve a quality, affordable health care. The goal of this committee is to reshape our regulatory environment to help make the private sector accomplish that end. We know that rural Georgia in particular needs better health care. The statistics tell a story. As of 2017, the Georgia Board of Physicians Workforce reports 63 of 159 counties have no pediatrician. 75 counties have no OBGYN. 8 counties have no doctor at all. And I think I referenced the other day when we were discussing the Mercer Medical School in Columbus. There's parts of Georgia that's basically a healthcare desert. We know that for any community to thrive or survive, there must be access to doctors, specialists, pharmacists, and emergency care. While this committee's purview is purposely broad, we know that the Certificate of Need program will feature prominently in this discussion. Since the first CON law was enacted in 1964, much about our healthcare system and our economy has changed. The federal mandate for CON-style frameworks was repealed in 1987, and since then 12 states have discontinued their CON programs, while others have modified and otherwise adopted those programs. CON has been a perennial topic at the General Assembly. I came in 2005, and I think in 2005 we were talking about CON at the time. And it continues to spark debate today. There's been a lot going on in the last few days since this bill was dropped, just as I'm sure you'll see it in this committee. But this committee isn't interested in turf wars. Us versus them won't get us where we need to be. Our focus is on patient outcomes and the opportunity to make Georgia a healthier state whose potential isn't limited by our health care system. We're here to help, and we will listen to all those who want to be a constructive part of this discussion. To give you a little heads up on how this will work this afternoon, Representative Hatchett and Representative England, both chairmen, will present the bill tomorrow afternoon from 1 till 4 in room 341, where the Appropriations Committee and the Rules Committee meets. Will be a public hearing from 1 to 4. So I'm going to turn it over now to Chairman Hatchett and let him present this bill. Oh, excuse me, no questions until we'll finish each section, and we'll have questions on that section, but no, let him finish the section before we get started with the questions. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know what else I could really say above what you just said, but, you know, this bill is probably the most complex bill that I've ever read, worked on, and also one of the biggest and most complex issues in our state. Certificate of need. This bill is going to do three things if passed. It's going to help stabilize our rural hospitals with an increase of $40 million in the rural hospital tax credit. It's going to provide transparency in the nonprofit hospital industry. And I firmly believe it's going to drive healthcare costs down and insurance rates down through access to additional service while protecting our rural service providers. Now, as I said, it's a complex bill and it's a complex issue. And I'm going to do something that's probably one of the most boring things we have to go through, is go through the bill section by section. And I'm going to start with section 1, and then I'm going to go to section 3 and 4, because section 2 is the most complex part of the bill, and we'll save that for last. But section 1 is pages 1 through 48. Section 1, repeal CON for the development and provision of all healthcare facilities and services, with the exception of long-term care and home health facilities and services. Long-term care and home health facilities and services will remain subject to CON the same extent they are today. That's 1 through 48. Anybody got any questions on section 1? All right.
I see no questions. Go ahead.
We're halfway through the bill. Section 3, Part 3. Yeah, I'm gonna get. Page 66. What this section is doing is creating transparency in our nonprofit hospitals, the hospital authorities, and our nonprofit hospitals. All hospitals are going to be required to post their IRS Form 990, including Section H, and DCH will create a similar form for hospitals that are not required to file a Form 990. They'll be required to post on the websites a copy of their annual questionnaire, which is submitted to DCH, their community benefit report, their disproportionate share survey, all their property holdings, their ownership interest in any joint venture, business venture, foundation, holding company, captive insurance company, and the operating contract, any bonded indebtedness, outstanding loans, bond defaults, a report identifying the purpose and ending fund balances of all the net assets of the hospital and its affiliates, all ongoing concern statements, corporate structure chart, including affiliates and subsidiaries, the salaries and fringe benefits of the 10 highest paid administrative personnel, evidence of their accreditation, any cash reserves and their balances, and their indigent and charity care policies and debt collection practices. That will be required to be reported on their website, and DCH will also put in regulations in a system so they can put it on the DCH website. Section 31.723 eliminates the use of medical use rights, And they're defined as rights or interest in real property in which the owner of the property has agreed not to sell or lease such property for medical use or purposes. And that's only for not-for-profits. Section 3.2 involves hospital authorities and how they use their excess funds. Is that how they're
Only if
catch?
they're not for a hospital authority that's no longer operating a hospital.
Did y'all get that?
Do you want to give him the microphone a second?
We're a tag team. So
That's okay.
I guess we're a tag team, and I've got evidently bronchitis setting in. But what this does, we have several authorities around the state that have in previous years sold off their hospital assets. So they're sitting there holding a corpus amount. And state law, current state law, and we're not changing this portion, requires that those assets be used for indigent charity care there in the community through the hospital. So we're making a couple little tweaks. One is going to allow for a hospital-owned charitable clinic to use those, the interest or earnings off of those dollars. But it also, if a hospital authority can prove that they have no outstanding debts, no outstanding bonds, everything's paid off, they have no obligations, they have a corpus amount of 20 million or more, that it opens up the things that they can actually invest in to a little bit broader scope than what they're held to right now. And it basically mirrors what we allow TRS to invest in, the percentage of the holdings and the things that they can invest in. 30, and that number is 30% that would be allowed.
Okay, that was section 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4. Section 3.5 requires any nonprofit organizations leasing assets of a hospital authority that they fall under the Georgia Open Records Act. So that's big section part 3.
Any questions from the committee on part 3? Very good. Okay, got one. What's your number? Okay, 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you talk about the 60 million to 100 million for the rural hospital? Is that in section 3? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I jumped the gun. I apologize.
Okay. Go ahead.
Ready? Okay. Part 4 is the section that this question just asked that deals with increasing the rural hospital tax credit from 60 million to 100 million. Within that, we did work to structure the determination of the neediest hospitals, those hospitals that are on the list that can receive funds from the tax credit. One of the additions to that definition and forming that list makes it so that a rural hospital that has a profit margin greater than 15% will not be included on the list. So that will affect how the list is formed. In 4.1 and 4.2, we're telling DCH that they have to develop a manual for identifying the hospital organizations and ranking them, that has to be on their website. They have to file an annual report to the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Health and Services Committee. Have to report how much a third-party organization is receiving for soliciting and managing the donations. And with the third-party soliciting and managing, in the future, they will have to list all of the hospitals that are on the list, not just the ones that are customers of theirs. And if an individual wanting to make the tax credit does not designate a hospital for the money to go to, that money will automatically go to the neediest hospital. During the year and during the process of the tax credit, of issuing of the tax credits, It's requiring the Department of Revenue to keep on their website a timely update of how the tax credit is going, what hospitals are still eligible, how much has gone to what hospital, and which ones, still have the availability to give money to. It also will require an annual audit of the entire tax credit program, and it removes the sunset of the tax credit, moves it from 2021 to December 31st, 2024. Does that cover all that? Okay. And that's,
Any questions on chapter 4?
did I answer your question? I never heard it. Okay.
Okay. No other questions? Now the fun part starts.
All right. Section 5 and 6 are cleanups with all the different changes, and if there's a specific question there, I will defer to legislative counsel. So, Section 7, and we'll discuss some of why it's set up like this in Section 2, but establishes the effective date, the day the governor signs the bill, but for other purposes as far as DCH and administering the new licensure procedure would be effective January 1st of 2020. All right, Part 2, which
Okay, hold on one second.
Sorry,
You got a
yes, sir.
question? Goodness. Okay. Well, talk on 26.
Your magnetic.
Mr. Chairman.
Use 26.
Hello. Chairman Hatchett, you referred to Section 7.
It's not in that version that we have.
What,
I'm sorry. 6. I apologize.
okay, thank you, Chairman Hatchett.
Yeah, Chairman 6. All right, Section 2 begins on page 4849. 2.1 creates a new structure for the licensure of special health care services. The new structure will replace the current CON program for healthcare facilities and services removed from CN under Part 1 of the bill. All right. Section 31, 6A-1 provides for definitions applicable to the new special health care services licensing structure. The definitions are very similar and embody much of the CON definitions, but there are differences. For example, the definition of an ambulatory surgical center has been redefined and includes a requirement that an ambulatory surgical center be owned by 51% by a hospital or a physician group licensed in Georgia. The definition of clinical health services is modified to remove radiology and diagnostic imaging, alcohol, drug abuse, and mental health services. And the intent of this modification is to remove these services from further regulation beyond standard licensure in hopes to increase the access of those throughout the state. Now it really starts getting complicated. A new definition is created for exception acknowledgement. An exception acknowledgement is a written acknowledgement from the Department of Community Health that an activity is exempt from the requirements of the Special Health Care Services license, similar to the current letter of non-reviewability, or LNR. The definition of a joint venture ambulatory surgery center is modified to include facilities where cardiologists perform procedures. This change is to ensure cardiologists are allowed to perform certain procedures in an ambulatory surgery center. The definition of a single specialty ambulatory surgery center is modified to delete single, because the change will allow for multi-specialty physician groups to establish a single specialty center. 31-6A2 prohibits operating or providing new special health care services without a special health care services license or an exception acknowledgement. It requires DCH to adopt rules relating to the quality of care and patient safety. The process for applications for a license or exception, including fees and subsequent inspections and the submission of data to DCH. That's that section. 31-6A-3 sets forth the activities, facilities, and services that require special health care services license and those that are exempt from licensure. And here's the list. The license required for those activities that are subject to CON review and approval under the current regime, but will be removed from the CON review and approval as a result of this bill. The activities subject to new licensing process are the construction of a new healthcare facility, an increase in bed capacity of a healthcare facility, clinical health services offered by a healthcare facility that were not offered by the facility in the previous 12 months, or radiation therapy, bilateral lithotripsy, surgery, or cardiac catheterization offered by a diagnostic, treatment, or rehab center. If the rehabilitation has not offered services in the past 12 months, and the conversion or upgrading of an acute care hospital to a specialty hospital, or conversion of a facility not subject to the new licensure process to one that is subject to the new licensing process. Subsection B sets forth the activities, facilities, and services that are exempt from the special health care service license. Sir?
53, bottom of 53.
I'm reading my summary, I'm sorry. The exemptions are for the same types of activities and facility services that are currently exempt from CON review and approval and subject to like LNR or the DET processes for exempt activities. Exempt activities include but are not limited to physician-owned and operated specialty ambulatory surgery centers, joint venture ambulatory surgery centers, expenditures for replacing and upgrading equipment, increases in bed capacity of up to 10 beds or 20% of capacity provided the hospital had an occupancy rate of 60%, and ambulatory surgical centers that are the same site as a sports training and educational facility. That's 3. 31-6A-4 sets for the requirements for a special health care services license. DCH has the authority to require additional information as part of the application process, and applications are deemed complete, must be approved by DCH. They must be approved by DCH within 45 days unless there's a timely objection to the application pursuant to the new code section. Section 31-6A-5 deals with instances when a competitor can object to an application for a special health care service license. An existing license holder may object in writing that an application for a license is not in the public interest if the existing license holder is located within the 10-mile radius of the proposed new facility, or the services an existing provider in the same type of facility offers the same services. An objection must be made within 30 days of the filing of the application. Within 30 days of the receipt of the objection, the commissioner of DCH must conduct a review of the application and make a written determination whether the application is in the public interest. The commissioner may consider whether the applicant's facility or services will have a material adverse impact on the objecting party, the unique healthcare needs of the community, atypical barriers or factors, the impact on competition, cost, and access, and whether the applicant will offer inpatient or outpatient services for underserved populations. The objecting party must establish that the proposed facility or services are not in the public interest by clear and convincing evidence. After the commissioner's determination, an adversely affected party may seek a hearing pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act, and a final decision is subject to judicial review. No objection will be allowed to an application for a license to be offered in DCH's Health Planning Area 3 unless it's made by an existing facility outside of Health Planning Area 3 but within a 10-mile radius of the applicant's location. You got a map map of the state in your packet, and District 3 is usually referred to as Metro Atlanta. And if you are trying to put a facility within a 10-mile radius of one of those in District 3, then you have to go through the outside, but within 10 miles. You have to go through the same procedure I just went through. All right, 3168-6 provides that as a condition of issuance of a license, the applicant agrees to provide indigent and charity care and participate in Medicaid and Peach Care for kids if children are treated. This is important. This is some teeth. The indigent and charity care commitment for nonprofit entities is an amount that meets or exceeds a percentage of their adjusted gross revenue equivalent to the statewide average of the net uncompensated care provided based on the 2 most recent years. So it's a 2-year floating average. But in no event less than 2%. And then for profit entities, it's that less 3%, but the for-profit there's a floor of 1%. And I'm going to go into that in a little more detail in just a minute. If a license falls short to satisfy this commitment, it's subject to a fine in the amount of 1% of its net revenue for every 0.5% of the shortfall. The licensee is subject to the revocation of the Special Health Care Services license. Any fines recovered are to be deposited in the Indigent Care Trust Fund and may be used for, among other purposes, expanding Medicaid eligibility. Entities are exempt from the indigent and charity care commitment if they are owned by a hospital or health system and have a payer mix of greater than 40% Medicaid and provide at least 2% in uncompensated indigent and charity care, or if an entity's total annual inpatient population consists of more than 60% catastrophic injury patients, injury to the spine, brain, or other paralyzing condition. Those 2 facilities that are covered in that paragraph I just mentioned are Shepherd Spinal Center Hospital and CHOA. Uncompensated indigent and charity care is measured, if this bill passes in the future, by the Medicare and will be calculated by using the Medicare reimbursement rate multiplied by 1.5. Now, in the system we use today, that number is based on the charges made by the charges that the hospital makes, the going rate, the highest price that can be charged, or the highest price that's charged for the population, the indigent population. So in this bill, we would be setting that rate, charge rate. 316A7 provides for the submission of annual financial reports of all those that have a license. In that, you'll have the indigent charity care provided, number of patients treated, the failure to submit will result in fines. They're listed out. 316A8 provides for the circumstances where DCH may revoke a license. The license may revoke for the failure to comply with licensing law, providing DCH with false information, the repeated failure to pay fines, the failure to maintain quality standards, failure to participate in Medicaid or Peach Care if applicable, and failure to submit reports to DCH within 180 days of their due date. And then there are penalties for that listed. DCH will have the authority to conduct investigations to determine compliance. Section 6A9 requires a party that acquires a healthcare facility to provide DCH with notice of that acquisition within 45 days, or you face a fine. Section 10 eliminates the requirement for CON review and approval for healthcare facilities and provides for existing healthcare facilities operating to a CON or exemption. This is the grandfather. This is the grandfather clause basically in the bill where if you're existing now, you come in under the new law. If you don't change anything, then your penalties and everything will remain as they were until a point where, I will list that in just a minute, you make certain modifications, yeah. Modifications that cause you to incur the new license. Trying to find the list. All facilities that are exempt from CN will have their exemption converted to an exemption from the requirement of the new license and remain subject to the previously imposed indigent chair care requirements unless it makes any modifications to the service it offers. Destination cancer hospitals will have the ability to convert to a regular hospital by providing DCH with notice. Upon conversion, the facility may continue to operate without further approval from DCH, but become subject to the indigent and charity care commitments imposed under the new law. If the destination cancer hospital elects not to convert, it remains subject to all the requirements and conditions that were previously imposed. Section 11 prohibits the establishment of freestanding emergency departments distinct from a hospital with no more than one inpatient bed. And Section 12 just allows DCH to promulgate the rules and regulations to implement the new healthcare services license and law. And I hope y'all are all still awake.
You finished?
I hope I'm not finished. but
Okay, well, go ahead.
I'm through. No, I'm through presenting.
Okay,
Yes.
who's 28 or 29? Okay. You're on.
Thank you for this. I think one of the critical sections of a pretty lengthy bill is on panel page 61. That and I wanted to thank you for that. I hadn't seen that before. And when you're referring to the apples, comparing apples and apples, the defining what uncompensated indigent and charity care will be based on Medicare multiplied by a factor of 1.5. I think that is critical. And do we have any idea of what that number might look like?
No, I do not. but I'm hoping that we can find out.
Mr. Newton.
Chairman Hatchett, thank you all for your work, and Chairman England, thank you for your work. These are hospitals that all of us are passionate about. We have families that use them. I actually work in some. I do appreciate that. I do think that level playing field, that getting a clarification. I know there was some talk earlier, if something's based on charges and you need to raise your charity care, why not just raise your charges 20%? And so, or lower them or whatever. So I do think, I appreciate the work that went into that to get us a real answer so we can see. Just back on real quickly, if it's okay,
Yes,
Mr.
go ahead.
Chairman, regarding, I think it was the section that had to do with transparency.
Yes.
Was that, do you remember where, okay, that was on page 66, I think. Just something, this is only applying to like taxpayer funded or taxpayer exempt hospitals, is that right?
Correct.
So this is people who are using taxpayer benefits or Georgia money that we're talking about, that we want some increased transparency. Is that right? I know one of the things I really liked about that, and I know this took a lot of work, but obviously we get vital signs when we have a patient. If we have a sickness, we think there's some challenges in healthcare, and I know all the representatives who have hospitals know about the challenges in this current healthcare market where it's changing so dramatically. And what I really liked about that is it's going to give us the information we need. Some are doing well, some are not doing well, some are dangerously close to the end. And I think I look at this from a medical point of view as just, this is getting the information we need, the vital signs we need, so that we can make an accurate diagnosis. And then we'll have better information to help the ones that need help, that can be saved, which we hope all can. And am I reading that correctly, that this transparency is to give us the information? It's not just for transparency's sake, it's to give us the tool we need to better fix the challenges that we're going to see in the next 5 or 10 years, not just the last 32.
You know, a lot of this, and you're right, correct. A lot of this information is out there, but it's not easy to find. And some of it is not, because some of them aren't required under certain laws that they do not have to report a lot of this. But we think because they are receiving funds and because they are not paying all of the taxes that for-profit entities pay, that let's make this information easily accessible either through the hospital's website or through DCH's website, just for information.
Thank you both for your work on it. I know it's been a lot. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I agree. I think that section is probably one of the most important sections of the whole bill. 24. Okay?
She's not on.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Hatchett and Chairman England, for your work on this bill. I know we heard a lot during our rural council sessions on CON and other issues, but I'm just needing to get an answer to this particular question as I get ready to go home this weekend, back to Taylor County, rural Georgia, where in my district there is not a hospital at all. And when I go back home and folks at the corner store want to know what I voted on or what we discussed this week and how did it impact their area, how should I explain to them how this particular bill will impact rural Georgia? How just if you can just give me a little small sentence that I can take back and share. How would this legislation greatly impact rural Georgia where there's no hospital like in my district?
I don't know if there's one sentence, but number one, it will help first with the hospital tax credit. If we increase it, it's going to make more money available to the rural hospitals. Number two, because CON will be eliminated, in rural Georgia, you will have the opportunity, if an entity wants to move to rural Georgia that's outside of a 10-mile radius of an existing facility, they will be, the process to do that will be so much easier. And the expense involved in doing that will not, it will become a business decision to move there. You can't just go do it. You still got it. There's still licensing that's going to be required, and we're going to make sure that you do know, you can practice what you're going to do. You follow the federal guidelines that you say, the function you're performing, that you have the ability to do that and the license to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So lot less expense in doing that. You wanna add to that a little bit? Or?
And one last question I'd like to add to that, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Go right ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I was gonna say, this is more than one Coca-Cola at the corner store explanation. It's more like a six-pack of Coke explanation as part of it. But Chairman Hatchett said it very well. It eliminates a tremendous amount of upfront costs that's currently tied up in the CON process that does nothing at all to treat a patient, to bring health care to an individual, to bring health care to a community, period. So it allows, that there'll be nominal fees associated with getting the license. Building the facility will be a larger chunk of money, but it shortens the process now that typically is about a 1.5-year process to a matter of 30 to 60 days of getting the license, basically, and saying, go build it. And as the chairman said very well, it becomes a business decision for the physicians, for the hospitals, for whoever is looking to come in and put a facility in that area. Can we make it go with the payer mix that's in this particular area? And in doing so, one, you're increasing access. With it being a business decision instead of a regulatory environment decision, it should reduce cost. We see that typically in things like this. When you pull all the red tape out of it, it drives the cost down. And so then that helps with the affordability piece.
And one last question, if I may. You referenced Department of Community Affairs and with this legislation that these new facilities will still continue to do all the things they've had to do in the past to get open. Would Department of Community Affairs still be a part of going through their checklist of making sure all these new facilities meet the requirements to get licensed by the Department of Community Affairs?
It's Department of Community Health.
I'm
but
sorry,
yes, you're
Department of
correct.
Community Health. I'm so sorry.
And one other thing that
Department of
I did,
Community Health, I'm sorry.
one other thing I didn't touch on your first question was, if a new facility comes into an area, then they do fall under new indigent care requirements and must take Medicaid and Peach Care if they're
Okay,
for health care.
very good.
On the piece about the licensing, yes, they will have to show, just like a hospital or any other medical facility does today, that they're able to deliver the care in a clean, safe, wholesome environment. They also, right now, under current CON, there are many times that the same facility, in order to get a CON, in order to be given a Medicaid facility number, have to jump through the same identical hoops on proving a lot of that. So we understand that there are many things that are being done in duplicate or triplicate. We're taking one of those things that's causing a duplication or a triplication of many processes out of the way as well.
Got it. Thank you so much for answering my questions.
Okay, number 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for all your work on this stuff. I mean, it's a big old bill. And kind of piggybacking on what she was talking about, have y'all talked to any hospitals that are ready to go as far as, are they saying deregulate and we're going to go to the strawberry capital of the world to build a facility, and we're not going there now because of all the regulations? Is that...
He hadn't heard from a specific hospital. He's heard from private entities that are looking at areas like that. One other item, sorry, it goes to the previous question, sort of. Within the 10-mile, I was talking about outside of a 10-mile radius of an existing facility, but within that existing facility, that 10-mile radius of an existing facility, with the new licensure program, the only entity that can object is the entity within the 10-mile radius. No other entity without the state can object, which is totally different from how it exists now. So, you got another question?
And that's if it's like services.
If it's like
And
services,
that's if
right?
it's like services. If a hospital were not, say, doing orthopedics, and someone wanted to come in and do orthopedics. Since the hospital is not currently doing that, and that's not part of their current license, they don't have grounds at that point to stand for an objection, just because someone at some point may think some point in the future we may add that.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And is there, obviously, I haven't read through every word of this awesome bill yet, but did I miss any sort of incentives to keep this from being an urban medical care expansion project, which would, you're just seeing, again, going back to that business model concept, where in Athens I can see folks saying, oh yeah, we could use another orthopedic clinic, let's put one around here. We're 10 miles away from this existing one, but we can catch the MSA. How are we going to really focus on getting these folks out to rural Georgia as opposed to keeping it centered around where the most of the population is with insurance to pay the facilities?
I don't know that I really follow the question, so I hope you.
I'll
Sorry.
take a stab at that
You know,
question.
how are we going to stop it from being just city-centric in essence? And are there any things that we can do to help it?
I think the biggest thing that you see on keeping it from being city-centric is that you are opening the playing field statewide. You do have the 10-mile radius to help protect our rural hospitals that are not on the firmest foundations right now. We felt that it was necessary to do something to give them the opportunity to have a little bit of a leg to stand on to fight back a little bit. And you'll hear testimony about coming and skimming the cream off the top and all of that as we go through this process. But we felt like that, number one, that care is not being provided necessarily in many parts of the state outside of those 10-mile radiuses or those areas right there. So we felt we had to do something to knock down the barriers that are CON. That the only way right now that you can make it work is to be in an urban area where you got the patient volume because of just the sheer expense of going through the CON process on the front end that never sees the first patient. So you take those barriers out of the way. This bill is not the solve-all to that whole equation. There are many other pieces, whether it's our workforce stuff that we've been doing through the Physicians Workforce Board, establishing residencies, doing the concentration that Mercer, Morehouse, MCG, and Emory and some others have been doing to get doctors into rural areas, getting them exposure in those rural areas. There's no single silver bullet that solves that. It is a very multifaceted approach, and this is one of the facets that fits into that puzzle, I think.
No, thank you. Appreciate your answer.
Okay, number 28. How loud can you talk?
I talk loud.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Hatchett, for your courage to take the lead on this issue. It's a very, very serious issue. We all-
Try 29.
Can you hear me?
You got the button pushed?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello?
Oh, you gotta talk loud then.
All right, on page 66,
Oh, won't work.
page 66 on 31-6A-11, talking about freestanding emergency department. I think the first place we heard this, probably Statesboro, when they were mentioning a freestanding emergency department. Am I reading this right? If you have less than one bed, they're not allowed, but if you have 2 beds or more, they would be, freestanding emergency department would be allowed.
2 beds or more allowed, and they're classified as micro hospitals.
It'd be a micro hospital
Yes.
at that point, and so would they be subject to MTILA laws?
Yes.
Yeah.
They would.
Yeah. Yeah, the micro hospitals, the way they're set up, are basically just that, a micro hospital. So they are subject to all the current MTALA requirements. And I'll just go on and add here, a lot of discussion has been made about freestanding EDs. The testimony we heard on the RDC, I think it was in Statesboro, as we had brought in folks that had experienced the CON repeal in Texas, one of the biggest warnings they gave us was the issues, or were the issues that had been encountered with the freestanding EDs and what that had done to number of providers available for the rural parts of the state, and what they had seen, they basically became a magnet for a lot of those rural providers to come to. And so then they had just huge gaping holes in the provider need out in the rural parts of the state, and that's the last thing we wanna cause, is going back to the previous question, and you know, we're trying several things to get that coverage out there, and no single thing, but we sure don't wanna do one thing that kills what we've tried in so many other places.
Okay. 23.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick follow-up question. You had mentioned the statewide indigent care average as the target that a new facility that located, say, 11 or 12 miles outside an existing facility. That's for new facilities, that they have to meet that target. Is it still in the bill that there would be a double penalty if they didn't reach that indigent care or charity care burden? Or like, if it's a 0.5% off?
1% of their
Adjusted
AGR, adjusted gross revenue for the prior year, for every 0.5% that
for
they
every
don't
0.5%
meet.
that they missed it.
Right.
So it's a pretty significant, I know we've heard before and some concern in the rural areas, no one competes for the uninsured, but a new facility that doesn't meet their indigent care average, they're gonna pay a significant penalty if they don't. So they're gonna need to go take some of that burden from that nearby facility, because they are gonna need a certain amount of indigent care to meet their licensure requirements, if that's the way I read this. Okay, thank y'all.
And the idea there has always been too, that if an entity chooses not to do that indigent charity care, that's fine. That's a business decision they make at that point. But in order to do that, the ones that those individuals fall back on, which are gonna be the hospitals, they're gonna be the rural hospitals, they're gonna be the hospitals here in Atlanta, with the fines going back into the Indigent Care Trust Fund, available for the Medicaid match and drawdown, then those dollars are magnified to be sent back out to the hospitals that are doing that indigent charity care across the state.
And that's in addition to the rural tax credit and other
Yes.
things that might be coming or
Correct.
what they're getting. Thank you, thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
19.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both for your presentation. We discussed on the Rural Economic Development Council the problem with some hospital authorities, entities, whatever we want to call it, and the land and the parcels that they pick up and then don't necessarily meet a medical use of that. And I was looking through the bills, because we've all heard on that council, online and offline, from school boards and counties that said we're losing property taxes for something that has never developed. And I know this is a first step, and it's a big first step. Is there anything particular in this bill that says, you know, after so years, if you haven't improved the property, you got to pay the taxes, or anything that kind of helps our local school boards that would? And I know that was something that was kind of moving on.
Well, as we were working on the bill, that is actually current state law. If a hospital, not-for-profit hospital, or hospital authority owns property that is not being used for medical use, for medical service, to provide some type of medical service, then it is to remain on the tax roll until it goes into that medical service. And I think one of the things that we need to do outside of this bill is remind our local tax officials that is actually the case. I think, to no one's fault, that in many times when the local tax officials see, well, the hospital's buying that piece of property, they're a hospital authority or whatever, they automatically assume that it rolls off the tax rolls. And actually, in state law, it's very specific in stating that it has to be used in that medical use in order to be exempt from property tax.
If I may continue, then the purpose of listing on line 2393 of listing all the properties is just to help the local governments know that if it's not being used for that purpose, then they have legal right to collect the taxes on that.
Exactly. And that's the reason we went as far as putting into what the current use of that piece of property is, or that parcel.
Thank you for your work.
21.
Here I am. How you doing today?
We're great. How are you?
It's been a great day, and I really enjoyed seeing Dr. Rowland, representative, today, and it brought back long memories of CON. kind of been involved in the certificate of need for a long time. In fact, I remember, Chairman Smith, when we had the Houston Hospital went through the state planning agency to create the clinic there in Columbus. And CON has been a major player in our state for a long, long time. So I can understand why we're sitting here today looking at public policy as it relates to CON. I just want to ask you, because two things I feel very strongly about. One is the Medicaid and Peach Care for Kids, and in collaboration with that is the indigent care, as hospitals do now. Some do and some don't. And can you elaborate on I really enjoyed reading the summary that you passed out, and on page 2, it deals with the licensure requirement to participate in Medicaid and Peach Care. Explain to me so under this bill, beginning of January 2020, all valid CONs will convert to a special kind of licensure?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. With that being said, then on page 2, when they do that conversion, explain to me the bottom of the page where the percentage of what a hospital or what an entity would have to what would be their requirement under indigent or Medicaid?
If
Yeah.
they only convert, if they convert from CON to the new license.
Right.
With no changes.
Okay.
It would be what it is today, which for most facilities is 3%.
Okay.
Some facilities, there's a carve out, some are setting at 2%. A material modification of that license, which would be some of the things that Chairman Hatchett mentioned earlier, adding additional beds, adding additional lines of service, doing a major addition to the building to add services, those kind of things become material modifications. And at that point, then you you rise to the level of the new statewide, 2-year rolling statewide average of indigent charity care provided. And that then becomes the ruling grade.
What, Mr. Chairman, what drives the carve out? What circumstances? What takes it to 3%, or what drives it? I'm just curious to know.
I don't guess I understand completely.
The percentage, what of recipients that are qualified to have indigent care at that particular facility?
Okay, I'm gonna take a stab at this,
Okay.
and I'm gonna turn back over to Chairman Hatchett. Probably should do that first. That has been a bone of contention. Currently, you're comparing apples, oranges, tangerines, grapefruits, apricots, cashews, peanuts,
Well, that's what
pecans,
certificate of need has been, all of these.
pine trees, and it has been, a lot of it's been based on what is called charge master. So charge master is what, in a wonderful world, if we all got what we wanted, that would be the price you would post for a particular procedure. Underneath that then becomes what you may have as a contracted rate with an insurance company, whether it be Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United, whoever, Kaiser Permanente. I don't want to leave anybody out because they'll get mad, but I can't remember anymore right now. But anyway, so you've got a contracted rate, say for a knee replacement. You post a price for knee replacement, you got one. You post that as your charge master. You go into negotiations with those insurance companies to figure out, okay, if a Blue Cross Blue Shield patient or an Anthem patient comes in, we're going to charge you this much for that same procedure. So I'm going to pick numbers. Don't anybody jump me about this because I don't know what the number would be, but I'm going to do it to keep the math kind of simple. Say the knee replacement's $10,000. Well, they may have negotiated a rate with Blue Cross Blue Shield or Anthem at 5. They may have negotiated the rate for the same surgery with United at 5,100. They may have negotiated the same thing with Kaiser at 4,900. We don't really get to see that. That is a private contract, and it should be that way. Then you have the Medicare rate. So Medicare then comes in and says, okay, the max we're going to pay for a Medicare patient is going to be $2,500. Then you've got Medicaid, which is going to be 86% of Medicare. So 14 cents or 14% less, and I can't do that math in my head quick enough. So you've got all of these different numbers out there. And sitting here today, I don't think anyone in this room could tell you
Okay.
what a standard is across the board for everyone for figuring out what that indigent charity care. And that's one of the biggest things we've wrestled with in putting this bill together, is figuring out how to get a true, honest, apples to apples, oranges to oranges comparison on what that is. And that's the reason for the 1.5% of Medicare. Because Medicare pretty much generally is accepted. If it's cost the hospital or the doctor $1 to provide that service, we're going to pay $1. And so we felt like that you've got to have some gold standard to go by. Medicare is that's pretty much a gold standard across the state among everyone. And saying 150% of Medicare, which then kind of gets you into that commercial payer range. It's usually 120 to 145, 150 as to what they reimburse of cost. And saying, okay, we'll let you count on the top end of that as your indigent charity care.
All right. That
Did that muddy it up real good?
But no, but I just wanted to bring that up, and you said that has been a bone of discussion, and because that's a major aspect of it and a component of it when you start
And in this whole discussion, we want
Yeah.
it to be fair. We've got folks saying we're not trying to be fair or whatever. We are trying to be as fair as we can figure out how to be. Our end game here, and it should be all of our end games here, is to do what's best for the patient. And what's best for the patient is access, affordability, and quality.
Okay. And then you want to,
No, I didn't know if part of your question was where fines are or if you don't meet the indigent care. If you're under the system now and you don't change to have to get the new license, your penalty now,
Modify your license.
right, if you don't modify it, your penalty now is if you don't reach the 3% or whatever your threshold is, you pay the difference between whatever your requirement is less what you did. And then the new will be the new, which is 1% of AGR for every 0.5% you don't reach that. So, and then he went in, I won't add to.
well, I think the explanation he gave was, it clears, it helps me a little bit, but because that, to me, that's a major,
We're setting
setting the bar somewhere.
bar. That's right.
That you can, because all of us have different constituents, and when they go somewhere, we want to make sure that there is some receptiveness to the person receiving the care.
And it's just a measurement of indigent care is what it's just
That-
giving
that-
us a valid measurement of what kind of indigent care that all of our facilities are offering in the state.
And as we go forward, Mr. Chairman, my last point was the on Medicaid waivers and as it relates to another issue that we're having here, a discussion in the state. They both can coexist. In other words, some people say, well, you can't, if you can't have Medicaid expansion if you have CON or vice versa. That's just not a true statement. You can, both can coexist in a state that's from a regulatory standpoint. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Would you agree?
There's no would you agree with that? That both can coexist. One is not dependent upon the other. They're two.
No.
No, but I think.
Several legislators asked me, well, if you got CON, you can't have Medicaid waivers. That's not a true statement. You can do both.
I think you're right, but I would add the caveat that as we look at trying to do something innovative for the state of Georgia through a waiver program, that we have gotten some pretty clear messaging that
Right.
if we have CON in place, that is not, a waiver is not an option for us.
Okay, just wanted to clear the air and put that out there, so we can have some full discussion as we go down the road. Thank you.
Okay, number one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When Representative Bentley asked the question a little earlier about what is going to be the major benefits you can take back, your first answer was the increased hospital tax credit. Now, we could increase that hospital tax credit with about a 2-page bill and save these other 82 pages if we wanted to, right?
I'm not sure how long the bill would be, but
We don't have to do away with everything else to do that. We've done that without changing CON and all this,
correct.
correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's not connected necessarily to this. It could be done without that. Okay.
We are putting some other stipulations on the hospital tax credit and the entities that are involved in that, but yes.
Okay. As I read a lot of the bill here, can I assume that there seems to be a very significant distrust of the public hospitals, and there's somewhat of an accusation here that they are significantly abusing their tax-exempt status? Is that part of the reason this bill is out there?
I think, I don't know that I would word it exactly as you worded it, but there is a concern that many of your nonprofit hospitals, and I submit not all, are under a veil or a cloak that we can't see where the money is being spent and what they're doing with it, why they have it, where it is. And we're trying, at the same time, we're fighting every day trying to reduce the cost of our healthcare services. And organizations, hospitals, other organizations, the prices that we continue to pay are not going down. One of the three main functions of CON formation was to lower cost. And I don't think anybody in here can argue that it's done that. So I think we need to make some changes in CON to drive costs down, and at the same time allow us, everybody, to see how much money they're making or losing and where it's being spent, and see what we can do to help or drive public opinion to wherever it goes. I mean, let it be out there so people can see what is happening with our hospitals.
Follow up. Has there been any thought given to maybe first, before we just throw everything out and take a confusing system and make it worse, to possibly doing this disclosure piece first, make them put all this stuff out there and let's evaluate it and see where they are?
You've been here a lot longer than I have, and you know how bills function. And I would, probably not be sitting here if I thought I could introduce this bill and have it passed just like it is. So,
Well, that's the reason I asked that question. I've been here 13 years. I have never seen a bill that so significantly changes something that is so important to every member of this state in one fell swoop. And I'm seriously concerned about that.
well, it's a complex issue, and this just didn't happen. I mean, this has been discussed much. A lot of this has been discussed for the last 2 years with the Rural Development Council.
And I've heard that, and it's kind of been discussed in pieces, but when you put this together, somebody said it's like the Affordable Care Act. We may have to pass it to see what it does, and that's a little scary. One last question.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
I can promise you I've read this bill. So
That's good, but can you tell me what it's gonna do if I can give you specific situations? We're struggling, you're struggling with the questions we're asking now, so I think the thing I see is that there's a lot of confusion on what it's gonna do.
I'll be glad to answer any questions as long as you want to ask them.
Okay. Let me ask this one. In South Georgia, we used to talk a lot about trauma care and the need for that, and we talk a lot about access. If we do this, one of the things that most people think about, especially with their local hospital, is 24/7 care. If you get a major problem in the middle of the night, are we going to expand that 24/7 health care in South Georgia with this? Is this going to expand those people who would be there and take care of people in the middle of the night if they need it, instead of the people that'll work from 8 to 5 and be off on the weekends?
This it ties back to what Representative Bentley asked, and because we are reducing or relaxing restrictions on how you start, say, another hospital, then yes, it can allow more hospitals to open, or a micro hospital to open, because they don't have to go through the behemoth process out there to actually, exist. There's studies that are done that show that the way our CON is constructed right now, that if you got rid of it, I think the study shows that you could possibly have 26 more hospitals. I don't know that I totally believe that, but I mean, somebody did it, So I do believe that it would increase the possibility of more 24/7 facilities like you mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'd add one a little addition to that. In an area, many of which you're concerned about, which I am too, and I spend a lot of time in those parts of the state, there are no doctors there as it stands today. Many of those hospitals are struggling to find doctors. If you take down many of the barriers that are currently in place to allow the doctors the ability to come in and, whether it's in a private practice, whether it's through an ambulatory surgery center or something to that effect, guess what? That means there are more doctors that are there. And it means that there are doctors in the event of a traumatic accident of some sort. I know of no doctor that would refuse care, period. Whether they're affiliated with the hospital or not affiliated with the hospital or whatever, if they're in that area, they're gonna provide that care, because that's in their DNA. That's what they went to school for. That's their mentality. That's their servant attitude. And so I think in many of the pieces as it comes together, because you are doing something to foster, to fertilize, and to grow more physicians being in rural parts of the state, I think that helps everyone, including the hospitals, including everyone, and again, going to the bottom line, to the patient, because there are more opportunities to be helped.
Number 18.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to go back to that rural piece that we talked about, I've started on earlier. That 10-mile radius piece, and I know that's in the metro areas for sure, but then I think it's also still in the rural area. Is that? It's
only in
only
rural.
That 10-mile thing is exempt in the rural. How far can someone build?
You can, okay, if you have a orthopedic surgery center right now, somewhere in rural Georgia, outside of the metro area, and say, I want to come build one too, because I've watched and seen how much money you're making. Well, I want to come 3 miles from you. Then that's what it makes it so that, number one, if I want to move to where you are, then I have to notify DCH. I have to put it in the newspaper, and that I'm within 45 days of trying to do it. I'm going to put everybody on notice that I'm want to do this. Then you, if you're there now, you can fight me on doing that, and you can prove that If you can prove in clear and convincing evidence that because I come there, it's going to make you shut your door, then I'm not going to be able to come there. So it gives outside of the metro area, the people that exist now, a 10-mile protected radius of somebody directly competing against them, hospital or surgery center. And then if I move, say, 11 miles from you, there's nobody else doing that, then I'm at that point, then I'm protected. So
and I guess that's my main concern in the rural area.
in a rule.
That being, I don't know, was any thought of maybe given to extending that hypothetically 25 or 20?
Well, we looked at 20. First we looked at 20 miles, and if you put 20 miles, then there's, as Terry said, there's one little spot down in a riverbed somewhere that you could have added a added service or something.
It, so
yes.
okay. I just wanted some thought was considered.
19. Okay. Well, that looks like it's all the questions from the committee. Just as a reminder, tomorrow at, from 1 to 4 in room 341, the Appropriations Committee room. It could be called the Rules Committee room too. Just always appropriations. Yes, sir.
I just would like to thank the committee for staying here and listening, and I would like to thank you and please ask you to go to the hearing. There's going to be more than one. Listen.
Y'all get them, please.
Come to me with your questions, with your solutions, with changes you would like to make, because I want to see this through for the health care of all of the citizens of the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank Chairman Hatchett and Chairman England for their presentation. This is a very important issue. I've been here 15 years, like Chairman England has, and every year we talk about CON, and that's all that occurs is talk. But I want people to realize that if we do nothing to address the price of health care, all we're doing is shuffling papers. That's all we're doing. So we've got to do something about the price of health care because it's killing people. It's the number one reason people go bankrupt in the state of Georgia and the United States. So we've got to do something about the price of health care. Meeting is adjourned. We'll see y'all tomorrow at 1.